The other thing that happened just before Christmas, and I think didn't get much publicity because it came out just before. This is the magic SGI, services of general interest, or services of general economic interest, to be more specific. What the Commission has been saying this for quite a while. What you've got is there's a whole set of activities which need to be delivered for everyone, but the market isn't going to actually provide them all. So there needs to be some sort of subsidy, there needs to be some sort of support. So the train I came up on today, West Coast, well, halfway, stopped, the West Coast line, there's a subsidy for Virgin because there's an understanding that transport is actually a service of general interest. It's something that we all need, but isn't going to happen if we leave it to the market. There's also a whole set of things around care industry, around support for young people, support for older people, clean water, all kinds of stuff. So there's a whole set of things which need to be delivered. We can't leave it to pure market forces. So we end up with a sort of hybrid. So you have a procurement system, but you're actually subsidising some of it. Now what's been happening so far is that this has ended up with state aids rules, with all kinds of difficulties. And from my biased point of view, what tends to happen is I hope there's no one French here. I'll use a different nationality if you want me to be more objectionable. You get a large firm from some other country, or certainly not local, who will come in and make a very low bid, and under procurement they get the contract, and there's this giant contract which is delivered by a vast organisation from somewhere else. What they're saying in services of general interest is actually the purely cheapest isn't necessarily the one that you want. You want something, and again it's French, I forget the word, it's something like which is economically the best over the period of the funding of something. So you're looking at something which will generate local jobs, something that isn't purely the cheapest, but actually has the best effect on the area, on the place. Or it might be something that actually benefits the environment in the long term. So you're not just focused on is the absolute cheapest, but is this something that is the best use of the money? So before Christmas they came up with a whole set of things. They came up with a decision, they came up with a quality framework. You've got a couple of key pages of this in your pack. Again, I don't want to go into too much of the technicalities, but we've had something called de minimis of 200,000 that you can get out of complexities in the regulations if you're not spending more than 200,000 over 3 years. For SGIs, they put that to 500,000, so it's going to be simpler. What they want to do is look at, again, I'm probably going to be racist or whatever if I'm not careful. They want to focus on things like rubbish collection in southern Italy, rather than spending, sorry about that, Philippa, rather than spending time checking on every single time you want to get local jobs for local people. So it's going to be a lot simpler, it's going to be a lot more straightforward for a lot of these things, which ties very directly back to local procurement, social enterprise, or small local firms and so on. The main documents came out before Christmas. Some of it is implemented from the beginning of this month. A lot of it is going to come in over the next year or two. But these are all sort of pointers coming from different directions.
And that actually is the kind of thing that ties in with private members bill going through at the moment here, Chris White, which is...
Don't know what it is, so not to tell.
Charlotte, you'll probably know a great deal more. I think you probably wrote it, didn't you? Or
well, yeah, it's just gone through the House of Lords. Actually, it's one step from being made into legislation. It's very similar, actually. It's to ensure that commissioners factor in social value, reports factor in social value into all their decisions. So use the same examples. So instead of from foreign organisation coming in, being able to bid much cheaper, you have to factor in things. Well, if you got a local contractor, they'll be able to create local jobs and these local economies, those sorts of things as well. It's very similar. Strong parallels.
all of this is connected together for me. What we're doing in the UK and what's happening with the Commission. Sorry, John.
No, I'm just going to say, just as a footnote, just to be a bit careful about mixing up procurement and state aid, because they're not the same thing. And although they might be relaxing some of the procurement rules, great, I don't think they're relaxing the state aid rules. There's some, so we have to, just because one lot's getting a bit more friendly to the sector, it doesn't mean the other lot is getting more friendly to the sector.
The 200 de minimis is staying.
That's a state aid. That's a state aid.
That's a state aid.
Yes, it's not
but that is going up to 500
yeah.
on SGI procurement.
But, sorry, and this isn't a discussion for now.
Okay.
State aid and procurement are different. So anyway, let's have that off.
Okay, we'll talk through that afterwards. Let's say things are heading in the right direction, but things are not totally straightforward. The other bit, and I was sufficiently delighted to this that it's actually in your handout, and I put little squiggly lines against it. When the SGI stuff came out, one of the things was a press release from the Commission, and on the back of it, they've actually said this framework around SGIs, services of general interest, will help the Commission to deliver on its broader commitment to put the social economy and social innovation at the heart of its work under Europe 2020. So this is just not an odd bit that they happen to do. This is actually really significant.
Let's go back to the de minimis point, just to make sure I understood that. So that applies to services of general economic interest. Is that what does that mean? Is that the service or the organisation providing the service? So if an organisation,
if it keeps the contracts in small lots, then you can say there's not a state aid issue, so it doesn't have to go out to the OJEC or very wide tendering that you might otherwise have to do. So it will end up a simpler process.
But isn't it also if you have an aggregate amount of more than
Yeah.
200,000, then you're
over
breaking
3 years,
the
yeah.
state aid
Yeah.
rule. So
Yeah.
that's quite.
So for an organisation, does that mean if you're generally providing services of general economic interest, then whatever comes your way, the threshold is now up to 500,000, or is it only those contracts that would be deemed to be
Only SGI.
contract? And that's a definition of a service rather than an organisation, is it? Sorry, do you see the question I'm asking?
No, I know the question, but the answer's not simple.
Fine.
State aid can be you unfairly support one organisation, which then gives out money to others.
Yeah.
Or it could be you're unfair because it's those firms there that are getting funding, not in an open way. So there's different levels as to who is contravening state aids, and generally speaking, de minimis is about the one at the end of the track. So, well, if you're giving this organisation support on business development, and then you're giving them support on growth, or if you're then investing in some new machinery over 3 years, it's not going to be more than €200,000. And now that's going up to 500.
Right.
But quite how that's going to work, because it's just SGI, as John says, just SGIs and not the rest.
Right.
But
It's only come out just before Christmas.
No, but state aid is right across the board. It's nothing to do with public services. It's to do with economic
Yeah, I know.
activities. Firms.
Yeah.
So you can be selling widgets to Fords,
Yeah.
and it applies to you. State aid rules do. It's not
Absolutely.
really anything to do
Yeah.
with the nature of the service you're delivering.
But
If you give a leg up to a firm delivering a social service, that's when you're then into both procurement rules and state aid, and the two interact. And I don't know. I mean, there are people who spend their lives sat dealing with it. There's some there, and maybe we ought to haul one into the room at some point.
But there must
They
be
don't speak
But there
anyway.
must be,
No,
there
that's
must
the
be
idea.
some exemptions, because
No,
how
yeah,
do
yeah,
these
yeah.
prime contracts, they're worth millions of pounds worth of structural funds, then get away with it?
Open
Well-
and competitive tenders. Open and competitive tenders.
It's a public.
But only a few
Competition
organisations are big
process.
enough to.
But your friend, your colleague, what's his name, Rentalo, the government procurement service.
Yeah, we have links in with procurement people and with the state aid people, depending on which bit we're talking about here. But are we talking about state aid here, or are we just talking about procurement of these services which don't have to go out to tender, which It's not the same thing as
Yeah.
providing
I'm
a
gonna
state aid.
draw a line
I
on
think-
the state
yeah, I
aid,
think
or we're
we-
going to be here all
yeah.
night.